Hello and welcome to First Act, a podcast from Koshi's Business Builders. I'm Cess Busby.
I'm Adam Bub.
And between us, the two of us have interviewed hundreds of the world's most inspiring and influential people, from pop stars to politicians, celebrities to CEOs, and everyday legends doing fantastic things.
Oh, yes, we do. So we love lifting the lid on those backstories you don't always get to hear behind the veil of success. So each week on First Act, we talk to fascinating business founders and other movers and shakers about their origin stories, how they found their purpose, and what they've learned from their breakthroughs and the curveballs along the way. We hope you take away something inspiring, useful, or just enjoy the chat.
Now, today we're joined by Amanda Rose, the founder of 6 businesses. She is Australia's foremost strategic connector, workplace trainer, business consultant, and a passionate keynote speaker across areas like leadership and relationship building. She's the queen of networking. Her business ventures include Small Business Women Australia, Business Women Media, Western Sydney Women, and Western Sydney Executive Women. Now, on a local level, she's also a managing partner of the Western Sydney Advisory, and on the global front, she is a member of DWEN, the Dell Women's Entrepreneur Network. You may have also read her weekly Daily Telegraph careers column, Boss Lady. Now, Amanda, you're one busy lady, so thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So, Amanda, we're so happy to have you on First Act. We always start with what we call the First Act icebreaker. So your icebreaker for today is... What book are you... That was my sad attempt at a drum roll. I mean, I've done it a couple of times on this podcast, but that was maybe... I need some more energy for that.
I'm going to bring in some sticks for next week.
I would like to see that. We will. What book are you currently reading or have recently read, and is it any good?
Well, this is going to probably disappoint you, but it's contract law. Currently reading contract law because I'm doing a graduate diploma in law.
Wake up, Cess. Come on.
But it is useful. So, you know, this is my 4th degree, and I wanted to understand law and the legal side in the business arena, and there was no better way of doing that than study. So that's why I'm doing it.
So do you keep that on your nightstand? Does it help you sleep?
Law definitely helps you sleep, let me tell you, and I do keep it on my nightstand. It's what I read at night and on weekends, but it is very interesting but can be tiring, yes.
Yes. Well, consider the ice broken. That is a great way to start this chat. And let's get started, Cess, shall we?
Now, you write a column for the telly, Boss Lady. Were you always a boss? Were you the kid that was always organising everyone and had big grand schemes?
Well, that's actually a good question. So I wouldn't say that I was a boss from a young age, but I was a leader. So I was always taking the lead just naturally. So I wanted to organise people. I wanted the best out of whatever team activity we were doing. And often I was just put in those positions because I suppose I was comfortable doing it and it came naturally. And so I've been like that since I was a child, from sport to school, at uni. And then what that evolved into is I always wanted my own business. So I started my own business, and that just turned, leadership into also being a boss.
So speaking of, school and, those early years, what was your first job and what did you learn from it?
Oh, so my first job was actually working in the kitchen of a function centre. So I had to, collect the plates and clean them and so forth. And because it was high turnover functions and, a lot of work, what it taught me is you have no time to spare. You have to keep moving and keep getting things done. And I liked the fact that I was constantly active. So I was always looking for work that kept me busy.
So there was that as a first job. Were there any other jobs that you did in your kind of teenage years?
Well, I'll tell you a funny story. So I actually didn't start drinking coffee until my 30s, but I was a barista without any training. They put me on the barista for a cafe because I was so good with dealing with people. So I was chatting and, people would come to see me and I would, have a good conversation with them about the day. In fact, there was one gentleman who was deaf. So, and I was at uni at the time, so I studied Auslan at uni so I could communicate with him when he was getting coffee from me, because I didn't like the fact that I couldn't communicate with him. But I was like the coffee queen. I was making all these amazing coffees, and I realized then how much I enjoyed listening to other people's stories and their lives, and that kind of just never stopped.
Well, that sort of translates into what you do now, especially in your column, but also in a lot of the mentorship and a lot of the kinds of things that you do within your various businesses. People come to you now for careers advice. What nuggets of career advice were you given early on in your career that have kind of stuck with you?
Well, not to take on too much too soon. That was a really good, because I'm so ambitious, right? And there are a lot of ambitious people out there. And when you're young, you sometimes can take on so much, you may lose sight of what it is you're trying to achieve. So I had a really, really amazing boss called John South when I was working at Mission Australia. And he was like, you need to learn to say no at the right things and say yes to the right things. And that was very powerful, because a lot of people do try and take on too much. And then you end up, doing 5% at everything instead of 100% at one thing.
Now, on the flip side of that, have you ever been given any terrible career advice and then afterwards you've smacked yourself because you're like, why did I take that?
Absolutely. So it's not so much career advice, but it was more the fact that people above me in the hierarchy trying to tell me who I was. So, trying to derail you in a way. I was once told that I was a very detailed person, that I was not strategic, and this was a justification for why I shouldn't be in the executive meetings and the executive team, even though I was an executive at the time. And I questioned that, because I know I'm crap at detail, and I knew I was quite strategic, but she kept saying it time and time again, and I realized, hang on a minute, why am I listening to this? This is not who I am. So I actually went and asked other leaders in the organization what they thought I was like and what my skills were. And they said, oh, no, said, you're definitely a leader and you're very strategic, and I'm surprised you've lasted as long as you have in the organization.
Really? So this person who gave you the advice had a bit of a reputation for being a dream crusher?
Yes. And you know what? On the plus side, it was brilliant training, because I learned to deal with very difficult people and still thrive and succeed under that. It was just, I realized, hang on a minute, this is actually limiting my belief in myself if I'm continuing to listen to this person. So I stopped.
So you wear a lot of hats. You're Small Business Women Australia, Business Women Media, Western City Women, Western Sydney Executive Team. But there's a pretty common theme here. It's a passion for supporting and empowering women. Now, when did you realise that was your purpose?
I think I work in a lot of my consulting work and what I do, I work with a lot of men. Right? It's just the business world, whether it's government, whether it's, community, whatever it is, I work with men. But then I realized women have so much to offer, but they didn't have the pathways, or they were limited by their own confidence or past experiences that were negative. And I thought, we need to change that. So essentially, women are this untapped resource for, community, business and government, but we need to equip the women with the confidence, the toolkits and the experience, from mentoring, to help them be able to move forward, and then also make the connections for them. And I thought, you know what, if I can break through the barriers and I can get myself into these rooms, then half the battle's done. All I need to now is build the confidence of women around me and then bring them along for the ride.
So what was that light bulb moment like for you, or even like a breakthrough moment early on, with your businesses, like Western Sydney Women and then later Small Business Women Australia? What were those particular moments where you really saw, you're like, okay, this is what I'm born to do? Okay,
so look, I'll tell you a secret, that every single business I started is because someone annoyed me, right? Or someone was trying to block me. So Businesswoman Media I started because no one would publish what I wanted to say, so I created my own media outlet, and I've since sold that. Western Sydney Women, I started that because women in the West were treated as second-class citizens and often still are. And I thought, well, this is rubbish. I need to change this. And so I just literally built that brick by brick and, brought people along, and it's growing. Because I thought, no, we deserve the exact same opportunities, not only as the men, but also as everyone else, across Sydney and Australia. And then Small Business Women Australia, when the first lockdown happened, I realised, hang on a minute, no one is advocating for the woman, the female small business owner who doesn't necessarily bring in the multi-million-dollar small business income. A majority of them, 80% of small business women actually have a turnover of 250,000 and under. And there are a lot that were being missed out with that whole $75,000 mark and all these little complications that happened. I thought they need a voice. So again, I got annoyed. So I started that to give them a voice, and they realized she advocates for us. And now we have a really strong community.
You kind of touched on it a little bit just then about how people in Western Sydney, they face these kind of negative connotations. There's a lot of kind of assumptions and stereotypes. Did you feel stigmatized when you first entered the world of business and entrepreneurs?
Absolutely. So I experienced it even at school. But definitely in the workforce. I come from a working class family, and, once you're working class, it doesn't leave you. You don't try to escape it. You just want more opportunities or the same opportunities as everyone else. So the stigma is real, and Western Sydney is very mixed, right? And there's all different levels. But the stigma is really like classism or elitism of just because you're from that area, even if you had money, even if you didn't have money, whatever it is, I'm still better than you. They assume that people in Western Sydney aren't smart enough to make their own choices. They're not ambitious enough or don't have the ambition to want more in life. And it's ridiculous. I mean, we shouldn't be putting pressure on people to be anything more than they want to be, but we should be giving them the exact same opportunities, resources, and assistance as everyone else.
It is a conundrum, isn't it? You've got all this passion and you're wanting to help push all these women forward, and there's all these barriers and biases that you've been facing as a woman. But then there's got to be positives as well. I mean, how do you feel being someone from Western Sydney has shaped you and your career?
Oh, I love it. So I'm so proud to be from Western Sydney. And what I really like is that I'm grounded, I think, not only because of my family, but for being from Western Sydney, but I'm an example to other girls and women from the area. And they can just look at me and think, well, hang on a minute. If she can create a business from scratch on her own without any funding or any support and have this impact, then, hey, I can do it too. I want to learn from her. And I think, when you're helping someone, I was always raised that if you help one woman or one girl, she will help someone else. And that has a ripple effect. So it's just that community of knowing that if you help one woman or one, group of women, they're going to carry on that legacy and help others. And that takes time. So I'm in it for the long game as well. So I think a lot of people don't realize that the Western Sydney blood is that we're hardworking and persistent. So everything we do, like dog with a bone, we're not giving up. And I really want to do what I can do to help those who don't have the same access as me or don't have the same opportunities as me.
It can be that real thing of how, and you see it all across Sydney, but I think in a lot of major cities, like there are certain areas where a lot of people who are in the most powerful boardrooms are from. And to be able to try and break those stereotypes and go, you know what, if I'm not liking what I'm seeing, I'm going to create my own. What you do has a ripple effect because you're creating a movement. You're changing what the boardrooms look like and what companies look like and what entrepreneurs look like.
That's right. And also the advantage that in both Western Sydney and also with the small business women world is that that's where a lot of focus is on right now, especially like with Western Sydney, with the infrastructure and all the funding that's happening with the airport. A lot of people are trying to get involved in the West. And, it creates opportunities for small business and the people. However, we need to be very careful that we're not being used, right? So we're not just being flattered or invited along for the ride. So I like to work with people who are genuine. So I have a very strong filter, and I make sure that if anyone wants to reach out to help, that they genuinely want to make a difference, whether it's for Western Sydney or whether it's for the small business woman. And when that happens, a lot of doors open for a lot of women. So, other people will come to the party because it's the right thing to do, and some get forced to the party because everyone else is doing it. But we just still have to be very cautious that no matter what we try to achieve and, the doors we want open, that they're actually going to provide the opportunity and not just be tokenistic.
For anyone who's listening, how can they show genuine commitment to walk the talk on helping women in Western Sydney, but also Western Sydney on a broader level?
Well, I'd say be honest. So, if you're not from the area and you have no idea about the area, say that. Say, look, I'm not from the area. I'm looking to get to know the people. I'm looking to invest, and chat with people and say, look, this is what I'm looking to do. What is needed? How can I add my social component to what I'm doing? Genuinely have those conversations. Don't do one program or assist one person and then use that exact case study on every single keynote and board meeting that you have a long-term impact. It could be partnering with a school or with a community group for 5 years and show that traction, but be upfront about it. I think people that try to pretend they know the area, people just don't like it. They would rather teach you what they're going through and show you, and then you help them with what they need help with. That will get you a lot further.
Because there's nothing worse than a blow-in, someone just coming and going,
Nope.
Oh, I know exactly what will be right for you.
I know what's right for your area.
Yeah.
Exactly. So that whole, I've come in to tell you what you need to do. I'm like, wow, thank you so much. What will we do without you, strange person?
Well, what we love about you is that you have that passion for the local, but you're also connected. You are part of global networks for women entrepreneurs as well. How valuable has it been for you to connect with other women in business, whether it's on a local area or whether it's for women outside of your circles as well?
It's actually really important, and I encourage women to do more of it, and even just outside their micro level, but like you said, national and global, because I recently have, and look, I've been saying it for a while, that small business women are the untapped resource of this country. And I believe that we need to be sharing ideas together. We need to be sharing contacts, for example, with funding. We need to be networking and, iron sharpens iron. So working together on opportunities and improving businesses, because a lot of times women are in their silos, they're just working very hard, juggling life, and they don't ask for help. They're not reaching out as much. So I think we need to take away the stigma that asking for help is a bad thing or that means you're failing, and actually encourage asking questions, attending events, networking, letting people know what you're trying to achieve and see how people can help you, because they will. A lot of people will reach out and help.
Getting rid of that fear of failure is a big thing, I think.
Absolutely. And failing's not that bad. Oh my goodness, have I failed? But I have a rule that I don't dwell on something for, longer than about, 30 seconds, because the thing is, you've got to get back up and keep going. So what have I learned from this? And there's always another angle or another door to walk in. A lot of people fear that there's a lack of opportunity. We are surrounded by opportunity. You've just got to open your eyes and have a look at what's out there.
We are back with Amanda Rose. So, Amanda, we were talking a bit about networking before. Not everyone is an expert at networking and not as confident, and some people find it quite daunting, actually. So what is one practical tip you have for anyone who walks into these environments, walks into a room and kind of shrinks into a tiny ball and rolls into a corner?
Well, they're all there for the same reason as you. So go out and have a conversation. Don't assume that the person you've turned up to a room of extroverts that are confident, they're all sitting there or standing there thinking, oh, I'm nervous and I don't know who to talk to. So they're feeling the same as you, right? And they're all just humans. Just have a conversation. Just say hello. How are you? What is your business? And, what do you do? What are you trying to achieve this year? And just have a conversation. I think we put way too much pressure on ourselves to achieve so much in such a short period of time, or the world said you have to be this extrovert. And the thing is, I'm not even an extrovert. Surprise, surprise. I'm an ambivert. So I can be great with people, but I also like my alone time. And I think people need to kind of just switch it on and say, I'm here for business. I'm here to get to know as many people as I can, have good quality conversations. And look, after that first conversation and maybe a glass of wine, you'll be right.
I think it's probably one of the only situations that I would find it acceptable for someone to ask, what do you do?
It's funny because every time I chat with someone, I always ask people, how's business? Right. And I remember learning that early on. A gentleman I knew quite high up in business would always ask that of people. And it's something I do because I'm genuinely interested. How's business? Because I try and find in that conversation, is there anything I can share? Is there any tip that I can give? Or is there any connection that I can make? And that instantly bonds you to that person.
That is such a great piece of advice, Amanda. I think we need to find these sort of entries into conversation that don't feel like you're kind of like a platitude or like you're performing or that you're putting on a face, like to actually cut to the chase a bit.
That's right. And, I'm not a hyped person. I don't flatter. I'm very matter of fact, but I'm interested. So I won't go on about, silly talk or things like that at an event. I'll just genuinely want to know about what the person's doing in business or what they're planning on doing and hopefully give them some piece of advice or connect them to someone I think they should speak to, because that's what I'm good at, right? And if you're good at a particular thing, then the more you get to know someone, the more you can find an opening to be able to provide a little bit of advice, and then they'll say to themselves, wow, you know what you're doing, maybe we should connect again.
And that skill also to know that if you're not the right person for them to, not even saying the right person, but like that skill to identify, oh, I know this person it'd be great for you to meet that person. Like they've got a particular skill. They're in a similar industry to you, or maybe they're at a similar stage of their career as you, or whatever it might be.
And that's right. And the thing is, I work with a lot of men, and this happens naturally. I'm in a meeting. I'm the only woman in the meeting. And by the end of it, it's, hey, you should call this person. Hey, I sent you this contact. You should speak to that person about this, boom, boom. And that's it. It's done. So it's like 15 connections are made in an hour's meeting that would take a woman a year to do because she's worried about asking for help.
Now, you just said sometimes you're the only woman in the meeting.
Yep.
What do you think are the biggest issues that are impacting women as they try to climb big business or the corporate ladder?
I think women expect to be appreciated and rewarded for their abilities and their skill because of their abilities and their skill, and that just doesn't naturally happen. Some people spot that in them and go, wow, you're fantastic, but you've really got to push it and sell yourself and build those private relationships. You've got to one-on-one connect with people that make decisions. Make sure they know what you're achieving. Let them know that you can help. Put your hand up and say, I heard that you're doing this project. I'd like to be involved. If you're negotiating for something, say, this is what I'd like to get paid, stand your ground, and it sets a standard of how they'll treat you. So it's being more proactive instead of waiting for the opportunity.
Why do you think, this is a big generalisation, but why do you think women are so fearful of blowing their own trumpet?
Because they get told if they do, oh, look at her, or, she thinks she's so good, or, she's so arrogant. And they're worried about that. They're worried about the opinions of people that are totally irrelevant to the scheme of things, which is fascinating. And the reality is people that make those comments, they're not paying you. They're not hiring you. They're not promoting you. So, I believe in blocking people the second they give you that attitude and get on with it, because those who genuinely like what you do and know what you're achieving, they want to work with you. They want to hire you. They want to promote you. So you've got to really get that fear out of it. Even if a man says it, a man or woman says it to you, that, oh, look at you blowing your own trumpet. I mean, I get that sometimes, and I'm like, well, whose trumpet would you like me to blow?
Well, let's not go there.
I'm like, what exactly do you want me to do? Would you like me to hide in the corner so you have more sunshine, or should I just take my own spot, my own stage, and you create your own?
Yeah, you're a great representative for women. You're such a role model, I think, for a lot of women. And I think that's great because you can't be what you can't see. So how do you reckon we can get better at representing women at all levels of business? Like, how can we see more women in executive teams and on boards? And for you personally, what has been your experience of the glass ceiling?
Well, I think if you given an opportunity as a woman, bring a woman with you. For example, if I have an opportunity, I'll hire a woman to work with me on that, or suggest a woman for a board position if I can't do it. And if I can, I'll say, I think there's someone else you should consider. So put in the effort to bring a woman along with whatever success that you have. And then she'll be able to do the same, because if you're helping her in her career and her small business, she'll be able to pass that on. With me, with the glass ceiling, I face these issues all the time, but I don't let it faze me. I like a good challenge. My rule is that if there's a particular organisation or a group that block me, and usually it's because I'm quite a confident woman, but if they block me, I just go to their competitor. And it works like a charm. So you just got to keep knocking on doors until someone says, I like what you've got to offer. But the trick is you've got to let them know what you have to offer. You've got to promote. And that, even if it's simply posting on LinkedIn your achievements of you and your team or your small business, you've got to let people know what you're doing and how you've achieved and what you've done. And they're like, oh, that's great. If you sit there in silence, no one will know.
Wow, you're saying so many things that are just so important, and I think that whole thing of like being able to blow your own trumpet on LinkedIn and in professional networks is a really important point, and knowing what you want to say and what you want to get there, and being really, really clear about, okay, like I actually need to tell, I've been doing all this stuff behind the scenes, but to actually get that confidence. And I think, as you've said, that a lot of women feel there's that less confidence to be able to kind of do that. And it is a barrier, at being able to kind of overcome that and go, I'm going to listen to Amanda Rose and I'm going to do what she's doing,
Look, it's whatever it takes. And look, I have a lot of my mentees and clients and just network that would say, look, I was in this situation and I just thought, what would Amanda do? And if that's what it takes for you to take that opportunity for the first time, because then it becomes behavioral and you just, you do it naturally, then so be it. Whatever it takes, don't back down from a challenge or from an opportunity because of fear or because your confidence has been chipped away at because of some comment someone made in your life or a bad relationship or a really crappy boss in the past or whatever it is. Not all people are like that, and you will face more people like it. Right? It's never ending. Just keep moving forward. But the confidence piece, you have to be totally responsible for that. You cannot expect other people to make you feel confident. You just need toolkit strategies and a little bit of bluff. Walk into a room and go for it.
That's such a good point also when it's with big businesses, because you will find the people who are on your side. You don't have to be listening to all the people on the sidelines and, the peanut gallery. When you look at big businesses, and obviously you do a lot of consulting work with big businesses, what do you think is the main challenge in delivering on, these big promises they make about diversity and inclusion, whether it's for women or whether it's for other groups?
It's interesting because I was thinking the other day, if you have an inclusive nature, then diversity isn't an issue, right? Because by default, if you're inclusive with everything you do, you will have a diverse workforce. So I think look, a fish rots from the head down. So we really need to make sure that the board of any organisation genuinely wants to have more representation, and it does take time. But again, you place a few people on the board, male or female, doesn't matter what the mix is that's right for the business, but their attitude and their passion needs to be to have an inclusive workforce, to have voices from different regions, to be able to genuinely realise we don't know much about this particular area. We need to make sure we hire someone from that area. And this needs to be part of their culture. It's a real cultural thing. If there's an organisation that doesn't do it, then don't fight them head on. Move on, right? There are other places that will accept you and give you the experience and connections you need, and they will succeed as a result. So you'll be beneficial to them.
Yeah. How do you know when it's time to cut your losses?
A couple of reasons, a couple of signs. One would be if you can't move forward or up in the organisation, so there's no further growth or education, you're not being supported, you should definitely look elsewhere. Or if you're a small business and you're trying to get a contract, for example, in a large firm, often they try and string you along, especially if you're a businesswoman. They really do try and milk you for as much as they can get out of you. And it could go for months. And then all of a sudden it's, look, we've decided to go elsewhere, but they've taken all your tips and your ideas. So you really need to have boundaries of what you're willing to offer. Don't go in begging or don't go in, needy. Go in confident of what you can deliver in any meeting, in any opportunity, and be willing to walk away. Always be willing to walk away and say, no, this is where I draw the line and that's it.
Is that advice that you give your mentees?
Absolutely. And I think it's like negotiation, right? You ask for the baker shop, you get a loaf of bread. You ask for a loaf of bread, you're going to get crumbs. So always go in big and bold and have your data, have your stats, know what you've achieved, and have the discussion. It's business. And I think sometimes we take things too personally. We need to go in there and realize this is a transaction. I like the credibility or the character of the organization here, whether it's a job or a contract. I'm willing to work with you. You align to my values. But also, just because you align to my values doesn't mean I'm going to dilute my value or my price.
You deal with a lot of women providing mentorship as part of all of your groups. But have you had a lot of mentoring in your own journey? And how important is it to have someone that you can bounce your ideas off, who can give you a bit of guidance to go, enough's enough, or no, keep going?
That's really good. So I didn't have really any mentors, which is why I'm such an advocate for them. So I had my mum. So my mum was my advisor, my mentor, my encourager, and she was, yep, that's enough, or you need to do this, or keep going. And every now and then I would have people reach out to me, maybe just say a comment. So maybe just, I remember through my career, key people saying key things to me that made a really big difference, but not an ongoing someone I could go to ask for advice, which was disappointing. And even, I found I was quite alone in my journey in building my businesses. And that's why I wanted to create what I have and really encourage women to take advantage of it, because it is lonely. And I could have avoided probably a lot of mistakes in my business if I had more mentors and regular ones through my journey.
You obviously bring a lot of passion and purpose to your mentorships, but what else do you think you contribute?
Structure. So, structure, vision, and confidence, because thing is, mentoring sounds great. Everyone's like, let's catch up for a coffee, but for what? Right? It's kind of like that person that says, hey, let's grab coffee. And you're like, well, hang on a minute. That's an hour of my time. It's still a transaction. How can we make the most of it? And any program that we run for mentoring, we make sure it doesn't just deal with the topic. For example, if it's career mentoring, we cover off confidence, stress management, budgeting, financial literacy. So we make sure that the woman herself is holistic in her growth and that there is no gaps, because you're only strong as your weakest link. So we need to make sure that she's covered every key area to be able to make the most of the opportunities coming her way.
You mentioned you have a lot of passion projects, and obviously women in aviation, that's a program that's a newer one of yours. What was the idea behind that particular program?
Well, that was because in Western Sydney in particular, there wasn't any opportunities for women to advance. There weren't structured programs and connections and all these things. I pretty much designed my dream program for a high school girl or a woman and said, right, the airport's coming. We need to make sure that we're preparing everyone for the opportunities that are coming up with that airport and to upskill them, connect them, mentor them, to be prepared and to have the confidence to go for it, because it just didn't exist. Nothing exists like this. So we created that and it was hugely successful. And we now have girls that are co-pilots. One girl is now half owner of a business. Another one is one of the first only female stunt aircraft pilots. And then we had another girl that's literally now an aerospace engineer. So it really did give them the connections and the confidence. So that was deliberate to actually provide value in a mentorship program that was beyond just having a chat with someone. Really, the mentoring is just one component, and we'll be running more. So now we'll be running them for high school, again for women, and we'll also be introducing one for the executive level as well.
That really brings it back to what you were mentioning, what you were talking about before, with it being very much focusing on mentoring within the context of where you are and what is going on in that particular area. Like you said, there's an airport coming in Western Sydney. You want to create as many opportunities for women as possible. So that is one area you can target, that one area that you see an opportunity. What other kinds of gaps are you seeing in the market?
Look, everything I've created is the first of its kind. So I really have developed even programs I've designed, and now they're being replicated elsewhere, and that's fantastic because I know I'm a bit of a pioneer and I take that seriously, and I love it. So we also found a gap with STEM opportunities in Western Sydney for girls and women. So we have STEM programs, mentoring programs, trades, but also, we'll be creating programs around politics, for example, helping high school girls understand politics in Western Sydney, because we all know when it comes to election time, we're the flavour of the month or the few months around election time, and we need to make sure that there could be someone at school right now that says, I want to change, I want to do something different. So we need to give them the opportunities and the connections for that. So we're always looking for what hasn't been developed. We designed a program called Future Not Followers with Women New South Wales, because I'm on the Council for Women's Economic Opportunity, and I designed this program to help with financial literacy in high school girls, but it is around goal setting and ambition. So it's how to set goals, how does money relate to that, and how can we take things like negotiation skills, understanding contracts, super, things like that the girls don't know, and then prepare them for the outside world.
You've raised a lot of really interesting points from a work perspective. There's also the life perspective, and I guess another one of those terms that always comes up is work-life balance. So obviously work is a huge part of your life, a huge part of your purpose, and the way that impacts, the various women that you've helped, it impacts their lives. It isn't just work, it is their lives that you're changing. What does work-life balance mean in your reality?
So for me, I don't like to do anything unless I see a return on that. So I don't like to waste my time sitting down for 3 hours watching, reality TV. It's not my style because I don't see a return on that. I would rather go to the gym. I would rather, have a facial or catch up with someone or a friend in need, hang out with family because that's always valuable and family comes first. So I'd rather do that. So my work-life balance is as long as the people closest to me are getting the right attention from me and it's quality attention, and I'm happy. That's exactly what I think a work-life balance is. But I deal with a lot of women who do struggle with that concept, and the biggest issue is actually the expectations of others. So it's others expecting a lot from you that they don't necessarily expect of themselves. So we really need to be very careful of setting our own boundaries and being honest about what it is that we want to achieve for that work-life balance and stick to it.
How do you do that? How do you set adequate boundaries so that you do get your balance?
Well, you say no a lot.
And so many people have difficulties saying no.
But it's how
they don't want to disappoint people.
Well, let's face it, you're not disappointing people because you're looking after your mental health, your family health, your business health, right? Because that's what comes first. And it's not necessarily saying the word no. It could be, look, I'm at capacity for the next 6 months. Would you mind checking in then? Or let's book in to catch up in 3 months, right? And let's do a lunch, and it's booked in. You've got something to look forward to without the pressure of being asked every week. And you also need to be mindful of just because you're asked to do something, it doesn't mean you have to do it. You might be asked to volunteer for something. If you do not have time to do it and you're pushing yourself to the absolute limit, the only thing that's going to suffer is you. And you means your family, your health, your business. So you've just got to map it out and say, right, I'm going to do 5 free things only this year. And once it's booked in, it's booked in. And you say, look, check in with me next year. I'm actually at capacity this year. Write down who is most important in your life and the key things that are most important in your life. Because let me tell you, when you're 80 years old, you're not going to say, oh my gosh, I can't believe I didn't catch up for coffee with Susan. You're going to be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I didn't go to my child's school performance instead of catching up with coffee with Susan.
Susan, if you're listening,
nothing personal.
Nothing personal.
You've been blocked.
You've been blocked.
All right, Amanda, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you today. And to anyone listening at home or on a train or wherever you are, thanks for joining us as always. Come back next week when we unpack another world-class Aussie innovator's first act.
Thanks, Amanda.
Thank you.